Good morning, students. Today we'll continue our discussion on risk profiling and further discussion on return analysis and financial blood report testing. Yesterday we did discuss what is risk and what are the different types of risks applicable to investors at large and more specifically to the mutual fund investments. Now, when we look at individual investors, they have got different risk profile, and this risk profile is changing over a period of time as we progress from different age stages in our life cycle. Young investors are always risk seeking, or they are always risk indifferent, but as we mature, as we grow, our risk aversion comes into picture, and we take calculated risk only when there is a sure guarantee of better return. So based upon the behavioral aspect about investor, this risk profiling is done. So it is feelings about risk differ among managers of firms. It is important to specify generally acceptable level of risk. And from the financial literature point of view and from behavioral finance perspective, we have got three types of risk profile. It is risk indifferent, risk averse, and risk seeking behavior, and all these behaviors are illustrated by respective investors as we go along through the life stage cycle. So what is risk indifferent? The attitude toward risk in which no change is return would be required for an increase in risk. So it is kind of a neutral risk profile, or it is attitude or behavior to a risk with no change in it. Even though the risk is increasing, decreasing, there is no change in the return what we expect from the investment asset as class. A risk averse, the attitude toward risk in which an increased return would be required for an increase in a risk. And this is most generally, irrespective of age or irrespective of our background and all. Initially, we will be always risk averse. We expect more return when we take up more risk. And it goes with the common saying which says higher the risk, higher the return. And this is what most of the investor presume when they make the investments. And the third and the last would be the risk seeking, wherein the risk attitude in which decreased return would be required for an increase in risk. So here we do find people or investor with different appetite. They would be ready to forego the return in the short run in order to take higher risk, but in the long run when they make that liquidation, the risk would have been paid off them properly. And basically retail investors may or may not belong to this kind of a behavior or profiling, but most importantly the private equity investor or venture capitalist, they are of this nature. And if you look across the startup funding and valuation what we are looking in the newspaper or in the media, the startup companies which are getting hefty funding from venture capitalists or private equities and all, so they try to take more risk in the initial phases and they would be ready to forgo the return, but at the later stage when they liquidate, they get the better reward for their risk seeking ability as such. Now, all these three risk profiles are explained with the help of graph. This was discussed, but I'm just quickly giving you the review. We have got two things, risk and the return, and both are directly and indirectly related to each other. So we have represented risk along the x-axis, that is x-axis, and we have represented returns along the y or the vertical axis. And we have taken up two contexts. Risk is on the horizontal side and the returns are on the vertical side. And we are representing returns with R1 and R2, and risk with the help of X1 and X2. So the change is from X1 to X2 in the risk, and the returns is from R1 to R2. So we go step by step as we have discussed, and we'll try to consider the analysis accordingly. So risk indifferent is this one, wherein the investor presumes a straight horizontal line along the x-axis, and it shows irrespective of the amount of risk, whether it is low or high, or whether it is x1 or x2, the return remains the same, and that is called as risk indifferent. He or she, or the indifferent risk oriented individuals, do not expect more or less return when the risk is increasing or decreasing. So the risk indifferent or risk neutral as such. But when we come to the other two contexts, so those are expressing direct and indirect relationship. So when we take up the risk averse, so it is coming over here. Say we had initially R1 return, and at that we were ready to take the risk of X1. But if you want to have a return of R2, then obviously your risk will go from X1 to X2. So there is a change in the return, and so as there is a change in the risk. And obviously, the risk seeking, this risk averse investor always show this positive curve. When the risk is increasing, even the return should increase. So this is what they expect, or this is what their attitude or behavior toward the risk and return profile as such. And it is represented by this straight positive or perpendicular line, which is going from zero risk to infinite risk, and even the returns are going from zero return to infinite return. So it is always directly related. But opposite to it is all about the risk seeking. That is a third kind of a behavior, and this is the curve which represents inverse relationship. And what is the inverse? On the left, take the risk on the investment, and they would like to be in the asset class. So this is how we try to explain, this is how we try to elaborate risk profiling of the investors. So we do find a direct and indirect relationship, and we do find a neutral relationship. So this is how the risk and returns are assumed from the individual investor perspective. And these are the profiles what we express, what we go through during our investment cycle or during our life cycle stages as such. So this is all about the risk and the risk profiling. Now you can take up this assignment, that is your investment goals versus your risk return analysis. So if you go through, all these questions are close ended, and you're being given this 8 questions, and appropriately you have to mark your answer. And based upon your answer you stick to it, and at the end you go to the scoring matrix, and accordingly for respective question, for question 1 you had 5 options, and whatever option you are given, the respective score is given. For question 2, again 5 options where the respective score is there. So altogether you take up all 8 questions, you take up the respective sum, and you try to write it down over here. So the score will be written over here. For instance, say respondent 1, he did this exercise, and for 8 questions he got a score of say 43. Now where do we lie? 43. So it is somewhere here, 31 to 55. So it is a balanced one. As a balanced investor, you prefer a consistent growth pattern with few fluctuations. So this is how we interpret this risk return investment profile matrix. You on your actual do or go through all those 8 questions and mark your option, and later on accumulate and you come to it. Those who are young and those who are starting the career, we would expect they should be falling under at the in the growth or the aggressive phase. But as you mature, you can come down to the lower profile of your risk. So from aggressive you can come back to growth, and from growth you can come back to balance. And lastly, you can take up the moderate or the conservative approach when it comes to your retirement and old age scenario. So this is one exercise what you have got, that you can always consider, and you can find out what type of risk profile you have got under your personality. So this is all about the risk profiling as such. Then the next we'll discuss about financial blood test report. Now, what is the relevance of it, or what is the terminology? Because we are saying financial blood test report. Uh, Often we say finance is the blood of business, and it provides enough of liquidity to run and carry out the business activities. So in the same context, even the money power or the financial security provides ample of guarantee and ample of sustainability to the individual person. So on that regard, this concept was discussed. So it is more specifically the financial blood test report from a human perspective based upon the returns or investment what he has made in order to report as well as counter the future risk and the uncertainty what he or she might go through it. So the financial blood test report is a snapshot of client's financial position represented in a graphical or pictorial form. It clearly differentiates between what the client has already provided for and the surplus or the deficit. So we have got our life cycle, financial planning and event cycle. Those things we have studied earlier sessions, and we have to allocate enough today in order to provide surplus or adequate amount later in the future stage. So this financial blood test report will tell us what is presently we are accumulating, and is it going to be sufficient for the future, and simultaneously what best we'll have to do in order to improve our today's savings for the future requirements. The assets are segregated based on market liquidity as well as client's psychological comfort with liquidating them. For example, a client's residential house or collection of antique may have a value, but are in the nature of image assets, which are not for sale. So you have to identify what is important for you, what investment asset you have chosen for, and what is its liquidity when it comes to your crucial or contingent stages as such. So the FBR also highlights potential inheritances which are in the nature of contingent assets. So the properties and all what your family or your legacy has got, that is also considered. Even the insurance adequacy is captured in the snapshot, because we have to have financial risk management, and that is done with the help of your insurance prospect. It translates the future requirement of funds into the current money equivalent. This makes it easier for both client and planner to understand and interpret them better. So as we mentioned, today we may think 50,000 would be enough for it, but in days to come, because of inflation and market dynamics and all, even that amount what you have got today may not be worth tomorrow. So you have to calculate what is the present value of him in the future money, what you're going to get, or what you have already created for. So what it will do, it will safeguard your surplus rather than making it deficit in the later stages as such. And also it minimizes the assumption that need to be made. So what is the assumption? We have to have always surplus from the present and future perspective, and it should take care about your future requirement accordingly. What are the limitations of this financial blood report? Explicitly do not show year-wise cash flows of a client. However, as long as client has adequate wealth invested in marketable assets, these can be disposed of when required. Thus, absence of information on the year in which they will be sold is not such a problem. Though it gives some procedural and systematic facilities to the investor, but in the actual sense, it is we have to do it on our own expertise and with the inputs from experts and guidance from practitioners. So that will make your financial planning better, and it will make sure that you have got enough of things for your requirement. requirements. So ABR does not explicitly show year-wise cash flows and other things. The substance of information on the year in which they will be sold is not such a problem. With comprehensive financial plan, APR requires comprehensive information on financial goal, asset liabilities, income and expenditure of the client. Therefore, it is advisable to proceed to APR only when the relationship is deep enough for client to share the requisite information. So, as we mentioned, uh, we have to have clear and detailed information on the given context. Then only this financial blood test report and financial planning and wealth planning will go in hand, uh, as it will help each other to know better. So, in that context, the client and the advisor need to have a close communication and trustworthiness among each other. Then only it is possible to make it across. So, this is what we'll have to consider when it comes to the financial blood test reporting. And this is the pictorial representation of what financial blood test report is all about. Now here we have got two axes and we have got multiple column chart which shows in different colors. So along the x-axis, that is horizontal axis, we have represented our financial goals and financial requirements, and along the y-axis we have represented the worth or the cumulative value what we have got it. So when it comes from here, so the short-term requirements, then up to retirement your requirements, during the retirement requirement, current net worth, insurance what you have taken for, then your life insurance cover for the family, medical insurance, then your illiquid assets, intangible assets, image assets, and contingent, so on and so forth. Based upon your financial plan, will have to do it. And what the colors represent, a red color shows deficiency, that is required cumulativeness. So you have to have more as compared to your goals and availability of the money. Then green color shows we have provided cumulatively enough. So it shows that it is safe and sure. And this dark blue color shows the loan commitments. It is nothing but the liability what we have considered. And the sign or the light blue color, it shows the gap in the cumulativeness. So when it comes to the short term, we don't have red or we don't have dark blue because we have not taken any loan or we have got any deficiency. So it is well defined. And these are the values what we have got it. But as you go along up to retirement, no doubt you have got red color and you have got a green color bar, but green is better off. So it shows that we have got better safety and savings. But when it comes to during the retirement, we have got a deficit because required cumulative was this much, but we have created up to only this much. So there is a huge gap, which is shown by this sign color or the light blue color. Then for the other things, like say the current net worth or the insurance and all, we have got all green because we have provided enough of cumulative allocation or investment of money to cover up those requirements. So this is what the financial blood test report is all about. So like human blood test report, wherein it shows the content of glucose and other body composition, and if anything is deficit or if anything is in surplus, the doctor gives the prescription. So likewise the financial blood test report, when analyzed by the investor client and the analyst, they try to exchange what need to be done in order to make your future financial position better and healthy one. So this is the nature and requirement of this financial blood test report over here. Then going further, we'll discuss about return analysis. Now, we discussed risk or the variability factor related to your financial investment or financial asset classes. The further thing is all about a return analysis, because when you make an investment or when you make a commitment, what are we doing? We are trying to sacrifice the present in order to have better future returns or better expected returns in the near term. And in that regard, we have got different types of return calculation on your investment assets, and those we have to always consider a reference to your asset class and your time duration. So here it is simple written formula, and we have been doing it from your second semester corporate finance and all, when we always consider this percentage or proportionate return. So what is simple return? We have got RI, that is simple return abbreviation. Now PT, you have made an investment in the asset class and it had past value as well as the present value. So considering these two inputs, we try to arrive at the simple return. So a simple return is RI, wherein it is equal to PT divided by PT minus 1, and this factor is subtracted by 1. So what is PT? It is today's value or ending amount. So the asset in which you have invested, or rather you take up only the mutual fund, which is represented by NAV. So PT is nothing but today's NAV, and PT minus 1 is nothing but yesterday's value or beginning amount, or it is nothing but opening NAV value or yesterday's NAV value. So whatever difference you get, that you try to consider as your return. So this is how we try to calculate the simple return using the equation. So as we go along, we have got different types of returns. We have got simple return that we saw, then we have got annual return, that is on year basis, and going further we have got compounded return also. So we'll have a look at it. So how do we calculate annual return? So it is again R, nothing but the compounded return. We have got a principal amount, that is the P. We have been given the interest rate per annum, and n is the number of years. So using these inputs, we create this equation. So R is equal to P into bracket of 1 plus R bracket complete raised to n. So this is what we do when it comes to the annual return computation, or when it comes to your year on year return on your investment asset classes. So this is annual return. Then we have got compounding periodic returns. Now, what this compounding periodic return is all about? In the previous context, it was all about the annual. So you make the investment, and the return will be given only at the end of your year, and there may not be possibility of time period interval and the better compounding effect on it, because if you try to break up your asset into say optimal intervals, and if you give the effect, you get better return than what the annual return is giving it to you. So we'll look across what is the equation and how do we arrive it at it. So it is A is equal to P into bracket of 1 plus R divided by M bracket complete. Additional inputs what you have brought in from the previous equation. So A is nothing but the compounded return or compounded amount. P remains same principal, R remains same principal, R remains same interest per annum, and small n remains same, that is number of years. But we added M. What is it? It is the number of compounding per annum. You must have heard about compounding done at quarterly basis, compounding done at semi-annual basis, compounding done on monthly basis. So what is it? We try to break up our 1 year interval into smaller and optimal context. If you take up compounding at quarterly, so one quarter means 3 months, and your year consists of 12 months. So 3 plus 3 plus 3. So when you make your compounding return, there are four intervals, and with that four interval, your cumulative annual return will be much more better than what the simple annual return we have observed in the previous case. And why do we do this? Because when we break up that time interval, for that previous time interval, whatever interest we have earned, that will be added to your principal amount, and principal amount will become more in the sense it is in terms of number, and that will have effect in the long run how we go along. And this m is nothing but the frequency of compounding per annum. So if you mention quarterly, mean there will be four times, because four quarter makes one annum. If they say semi-annual, then it is twice, because 6 months once they try to do it. And if you presume monthly compounding, which is not very common in the context, but still there is possibility of having monthly compounding also. So monthly compounding means your frequency or per term will be having 12 intervals of equal months, and that will give you a better return on your investment asset classes. So this is all about the compounding periodical return. Now further, this is what important: CAGR, that is compounded annual growth rate. And why is it important? Because your mutual fund companies and even your AMC fund managers, they try to highlight the CAGR more commonly, because last couple of years they were doing better than the exchange, which was assumed to be the national or the highest transparent agent. But in that context, they were doing some mutual activity, and that was affecting this others group. So obviously, they gave away this concept and came along accordingly. So compounded annual growth rate is calculated using the simple equation. So uh, your mutual fund companies, they try to compare with your index or the benchmarks, and what is CAGR given by the index and what is CAGR given by the mutual fund, that determines how well the performance of your mutual fund is all about. So here we are given the equation CAGR, nothing but compounded annual growth rate, is equal to final value divided by starting value and raised to 1 divided by n. So 1 divided by this n is nothing but the number of years what you waited for, and minus 1. So why this minus 1 is taken? Because we want to know what is the actual return we have realized in terms of CAGR. So from this example, it will be made clear. Uh, you have got 3 years time interval, and the return of 12% for a mutual fund X will mean 10,000 rupee invested 3 years ago have now become 14,000 rupee. So what will be given it to us? Will be given the initial value or the starting value, which is 10,000 in this example, and you have made investment for 3 years, and after 3 years, your final value has become to 14,000. 49.28. Now, using this information, we fit in, and we get these details. And what is it? It is done. This is your final value, 14,049.28 divided by 10,000. And as we said, your investment was for 3 years, so it is 1 by 3 minus 1. So when you do the calculation, it will be 1.4049, that is 14,000 divided by 10,000. This will become, and raised to 0.33 is this. If you solve this, your value will be this 1.12, and it is in decimal. You convert into the percentage, so it will be 12%, and this is how the CAGR is calculated using the simple equation. information. So the mutual fund X has 12% compounded annual growth rate. And it is assumed to be better as compared to your benchmark for the last 3 years or so. So this is what this performance. We are not comparing with any other asset class or we are aiming for a positive period. So we don't want to become complacent with BSE or NSE or any other. You know what your current value, you know what is it, and you are also knowing what was your original value when you made the investment. If you take the previous example itself, so your original investment was 10,000 and the current value is 14,049 rupee, and again it is divided by the original investment, that is 10,000. So if you do this analysis you get the result. And this absolute return, we are not comparing it with any index or any benchmark, so it is the sole performance of your investment asset class. So this is the absolute return. Now what is this relative return? As the term says, we're trying to relate with some benchmark, or we're trying to relate with some industry standard. The term relative returns refer to a money or investment performance compared to a benchmark index returns. And what we have to do, or how do we have to do, aiming to outperform either a composite index of stock market based indices or a peer group benchmark over a specified time period. So if you want to do this, then you can use this equation. So relative return is equal to, again, you have to calculate what was the absolute return of our investment and what is the absolute return of your benchmark. And we have to follow same common time frame. Say if you take up 3 years, then it would be past 3 years both for your investment and both for your index. An index could be your BSE or NSE if you are comparing equity. But if you are comparing some other asset class, like say if you're comparing debt, then you have to use money market or your bond market indices. So accordingly, we have to take the proxy for your benchmark, and we have to calculate the relative return. And it is simple. It is absolute return minus your portfolio absolute return. So this is how the relative returns are calculated in the context. Now, we have discussed about simple return, annual return, compounding return. Then we discussed about what is absolute and what is relative returns. Now, finally, we come to a topic called as XIRR. You might have probably studied this IRR, but what this XR is all about. So it is extended internal rate of return, and it is used to find the return from investments done at different time periods. Because if you take up your mutual fund SIP, it is not that you make the lump sum investment. So you do the investment on monthly basis, and that is the reason they have to calculate what is the extended internal rate of return they were able to do on your investment portfolio. Because the calculation time and the calculation context of return does matter when we take up the different scenarios. So your CAGR XA cannot be calculated by a formula, but we have to use Excel to calculate it. So this is for your knowledge sake, and it may not be applicable in your exam essays. But if you want to make a career in mutual funds and all, then you must be having the application of this Excel. In the Microsoft Excel, we have got this function which we can use with the help of this. So this is the equation of XR in the Excel software. So XR is equal to value. What is the final value of your transaction amount? The dates, the transaction date from where and how you have done it. And again, you have to make a guess approximate return. You may keep it a zero or you may keep it one depending upon your requirements. So this aspect is considered from the XIRR point of view. And if you take up this example, what you have used it, so our investments were done from 1st of January 2007 till 15 June 2008, and we have made this investment at different time intervals. And depending upon those time intervals, our extended return has come to this level, that is 4.89 percentage. And if you take into consideration what is your cash inflow and how are you able to receive it over a period of time. So on 1st of Jan we paid 50,000, and on these days we are receiving this much amount, and on 15th January we have got this much as your maturity amount. And this is how the XIR or extended internal rate of return is calculated. So this is all about your investor risk profiling, your financial blood test report, and the return analysis calculation with respect to different time intervals, different context, and different analysis. So we will discuss about these things again as we go along, and we will do one exercise on this risk computation, wherein the standard deviation calculation analysis will make, and accordingly we'll see what risk is applicable to your mutual fund scheme, and how best you can assess or how best you can consider in this given context. So quickly I will give you this overview of standard deviation calculation, and we'll close the session. So here we have got standard deviation equation, and so we have got standard deviation calculation. We can do it manually, we can do it with the help of your Excel. So we'll show both. Deviation equation for an entire population. So when you have got a population, this will be the equation. So sigma is nothing but the standard deviation is equal to your square root of summation of x. So whenever capital N is used, it assumes population. So sigma is the standard deviation, x is each value in the population, x bar is the mean of the values, and capital N is the number of values of the population in context. But when it comes to the sample, it will be like this. So it is small as nothing but the standard deviation is equal to square root of summation of x minus x bar the whole square. So it is n minus 1. So we have to take this factor when we do sampling. So S is standard deviation, X is the value of respective sample, me that is X bar is the mean of the sample, and N is the number of value that is the sample size what we have got it. So these two equations we would use when we calculate the risk applicable to the mutual fund. And we have got all those details which we try to consider as we go along. So I would stop over here and will continue the session tomorrow. Thank you.